The air in Hive Ketos doesn't just smell like rot, it tastes like iron and old bandages. I am Orderly Vane, a man who has seen more of the human body's interior than its exterior, and today the heavy blast doors of the Sanctum of Respite are groaning under the weight of 1,000 fresh casualties. You want to know what a Warhammer 40,000 hospital looks like? It isn't a place of healing. It's a factory where the raw material is human suffering and the product is just enough life to send a man back to the trenches. As I step onto the blood-slicked tiles of the primary triage ward, the first thing that hits me isn't the screams, it's the hum. The low, electric thrum of 1,000 life support cogitators, all struggling against the inevitable. The lighting is a flickering, sickly green, casting long, jagged shadows against walls stained with decades of grime and sacred oils. In the Imperium of man, a hospital is a cathedral of the desperate. I walk past row 42 where the gutter blights are kept. These are men who breathed in too much toxic sludge from the lower sumps. Their lungs are melting, turning into a gray slurry that they cough up into rusted buckets. There are no miracle cures here. Only the Emperor's mercy and the cold efficiency of the Adeptus Administratum. I see a young girl, maybe no older than 12, clutching a tattered doll of a space marine. Her eyes are clouded with cataracts from radiation burns. I don't stop. I can't. In this place, sympathy is a luxury that costs time, and time is the only currency we don't have. The smell of burning flesh, the scent of cauterization, hangs heavy in the air, mixing with the incense burned by the Sisters Hospitaller to ward off the warp's touch. Every step I take sounds like a wet slap against the floor. We are deep in the gut of the hive, and the pressure of the millions of souls living above us feels like it's trying to crush the very building. A servitor, its lower half replaced by a rusted tread unit, rolls past me carrying a pile of discarded limbs. They don't bury them, they recycle what they can. Biomatter is too precious to waste in a galaxy at war. I reach the main desk, where a chirurgeon is screaming at a scribe because the supply of narthecium vials has been diverted to the front lines. This is the reality of Warhammer 40k. You aren't a patient, you are a resource. And right now the resource is running dry. I look at the ceiling where a massive iron Aquila hangs, its wings chipped and covered in soot. Feels like it's watching us, judging us for every soul we fail to save. But in the 41st millennium, failure is the only thing we're good at. The Voxcaster overhead begins to blare the morning hymns, a distorted, metallic chant that tries to drown out the sound of a man in the corner who is discovering that his skin is slowly turning into glass. Welcome to the sanctum. Don't breathe too deep. The alarms start mid-prayer. A dull, rhythmic pounding against the external hull of the hospital that means only one thing: bulk landers. They are bringing in the survivors of the 404th Cadian, or what's left of them. The doors hiss open and the heat that rolls in is unbearable, smelling of ozone in the vacuum of space. This is where the Warhammer 40k lore becomes a nightmare you can touch. The first stretcher is carried by two groaning servitors. On it is a sergeant whose torso has been opened by a tyrannid rending claw. He's still conscious. That's the worst part. The Imperial tech keeps you awake long after your brain should have shut down from the shock. I grab a tray of rusted surgical tools and follow the chirurgeon. No anesthesia, he barks, his bionic eye spinning rapidly as it scans the wound. The supply was lost when the transport ship, Hand of Faith, was pulled into the warp. The sergeant doesn't scream. He just whispers the litany of endurance over and over through shattered teeth. We work in a frenzy. My hands are soon coated in the warm, sticky reality of war. To my left, a sister hospitaller is performing a battlefield amputation with a chain scalpel. The sound, that high-pitched mechanical revving, is something that haunts your dreams. It's the sound of the Imperium, loud, brutal, and efficient. We move from body to body, marking foreheads with different colored chalk. Red for savable, black for final rites, and blue for research. The blue ones are the most pitiable. They are the ones with mutations or Xenos tech embedded in their flesh. They don't get the Emperor's mercy. They get the Inquisition's curiosity. I see a man whose arm has been fused to his lost gun by a plasma backfire. He's trying to pull it off, tearing his own skin, crying out for a mother who is likely a pile of ash on some distant world. This is the true face of the Astra Militarum's glory. It's not just medals and parades, it's this. It's the floor becoming so slippery with blood that we have to throw down sawdust just to keep our footing. A Vox unit nearby is broadcasting casualty lists, a never-ending stream of names that no one is listening to. The sheer scale of it is numbing. If I stopped to think about each life, I would go mad. So I focus on the metal. The cold steel of the needles, the rough texture of the bandages that are more like sackcloth. I see a noble from the upper spires being rushed past, surrounded by private guards. Even in a hospital, the class divide of the Hive is absolute. He will get the rejuvenate treatments and the clean beds, while the guardsmen who bled for him are stacked in the corridors like cordwood. A sudden explosion somewhere in the lower levels shakes the building. No one even looks up. In a Warhammer world, an explosion is just background noise. We just keep cutting, stitching, and praying that the thread holds. The deeper you go into the hospital, the quieter it gets, but the silence is more terrifying than the screaming. This is the Apothecarion, where the lost cases are kept. Here, the air is thick with the smell of chemicals so strong they burn your throat. I am sent here to deliver a canister of stabilizing fluid to Ward 101. As I walk down the narrow, arched corridor, I see the glass tanks. Inside are men and women suspended in pale blue fluid, their bodies a map of bionic replacements and scars. Some are being prepared for servitor conversion. It's a fate worse than death, but in the eyes of the cult Mechanicus, it's the ultimate promotion. Their memories are being scrubbed by flickering cogitators, their personalities replaced by simple subroutines. Lift, carry, obey. I pass a tank where a former officer is staring out, his one remaining eye wide with a terror that he can no longer voice. He knows what's happening. He's being turned into a door opener or a heavy lifter because his tactical mind was deemed surplus to requirements after he lost his legs to an orc choppa. This is the dark heart of the Warhammer 40k universe, the absolute lack of dignity. There is a section dedicated to warp touch. The doors here are reinforced with adamantite and etched with protective runes. You can hear things behind them. Not voices, but sounds that shouldn't exist in the physical realm, the sound of wet leather flapping or laughter that makes your ears bleed. The nurses here don't speak. They have had their tongues removed to ensure they never repeat the heresies they might hear from the dying. One of them points to a bed where a man is covered in a heavy shroud. The shroud is moving. Something is growing underneath it, something with too many joints. I leave the canister and get out as fast as I can. My heart is hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. On my way out, I pass the gene labs, where they try to fix the mutations that inevitably crop up in the Hive's toxic atmosphere. I see children in cages, their limbs elongated or their skin scaled like a reptile's. They aren't being cured. They are being studied to see how much radiation a human can take before they stop being human. A priest in red robes is sprinkling holy water on a massive machine that is humming with a deep, malevolent vibration. He's telling the machine it's a good servant. In the 40k world, we treat machines with more respect than people. Because a machine can be repaired, but a soul? A soul is just a snack for the thirsting gods. I reach the end of the hall and press my head against the cold stone wall, trying to remember what it felt like to be outside to see the sun. But there is no sun in Hive Ketos. Only the glow of the furnaces and the flickering of the medical monitors. By the 14th hour of my shift, the world has become a blur of gray and red. I am in the recovery ward, which is a generous name for a room where people are left to see if they die or not. This is where you see the psychological toll of the Warhammer 40,000 setting. It's the 1,000-yard stare of a Cadian who saw his entire planet crack like an egg. It's the way a soldier flinches every time a steam pipe hisses, thinking it's the sound of a flamer. I am changing the dressings on a man named Kale. He's a Hive worker who was caught in a cultist uprising. Half his face is gone, replaced by a crude iron plate bolted directly into his skull. He asks me, in a voice like grinding gravel, if the Emperor is proud of him. What do I say? I tell him the Emperor sees all, but inside I feel like a liar. The Emperor is a corpse on a throne, and Kale is just a speck of dust in a storm. Across from him, a veteran is screaming in his sleep about green tides and choppa. The orcs. Once you fight them, you never really stop. The trauma is so deep that the hospital has memory wipers on staff, low-level psychers who burn out the horrific memories so the soldiers can be sent back to fight again. It's a cycle of endless war. I see a sister of battle being brought in. Even in her wounded state, she is terrifying. Her armor is scorched, and she refuses to let anyone touch her until she has finished her prayers. Her faith is a physical weight in the room, making the air feel heavy. She represents the extreme end of this world, a human who has become a weapon of pure belief. But even she bleeds red. Even she needs the chirurgeon's blade. The sheer irony of it is that for all the technology, for all the spacefaring ships and plasma guns, our medicine is medieval. We use leeches to draw out bad humors, and we pray to the spirits of the bandages. It's a mix of high-tech and high superstition that defines the 41st millennium. I watch a man die because his file was lost in the bureaucracy. The medicine was in the cabinet 10 feet away, but without the proper seal from the administratum, no one was allowed to open it. He died waiting for a piece of paper. That is the most Warhammer thing I have seen all day. The crushing weight of the law, even in the face of death. I take his dog tags. They'll be melted down to make more tags for the next batch of recruits. Life is cheap. Metal is expensive. And faith? Faith is the only thing that's free, and even that demands your life in the end. The shift is ending, but in the Sanctum of Respite, there is no such thing as off-duty. The night brings different horrors. The shamblers start coming in. People affected by the Hive's darkness, their minds snapped by the sheer hopelessness of their existence. I walk to the balcony that overlooks the lower triage. From up here, it looks like a scene from an ancient hell. Thousands of bodies, flickering torches, the smell of incense trying and failing to mask the stench of death. You realize that this is happening on a million worlds across the Imperium. This hospital is just one of many. Every second, 1,000 people die in places like this, and 1,000 more are born to take their place in the meat grinder. I look at my hands. They are stained so deep that the color won't come off. I am Arbitrator Solomon's shadow. Where he enforces the law, I try to pick up the pieces. But the pieces are too small and there are too many of them. I see the chirurgeon from earlier. He's sitting on a crate, his head in his hands. Even his bionic eye looks tired. He's been awake for 3 days. He tells me that tomorrow they are closing Ward 4 because they ran out of power cells for the heaters. The patients there will simply freeze in the dark. He says it like he's reading a weather report. That's what this world does to you. It turns your heart into a cog. I walk towards the exit, passing the chapel where the dying are taken for their final blessing. The chanting is a low drone now, a funeral dirge that never ends. As I step out into the toxic rain of the Hive, I see the massive Gothic spires reaching up into the smog, looking like the teeth of some great beast. Warhammer 40k isn't just about the Space Marines or the Great Primarchs. It's about the silent corridors of the Sanctum, the rust on the scalpel, and the man who dies for a piece of paper. It's about the fact that even in the face of total annihilation, we still try to stitch ourselves back together, even if it's just to die again tomorrow. I pull my cloak tight against the chemical wind. My name is Vane. I am an orderly in the Hive's greatest hospital. And tomorrow I will do it all over again. Because in the grim darkness of the far future, there is no rest. There is only the duty to the throne and the cold, hard floor of the ward. I cast one last look back at the glowing green windows of the hospital. It looks like a lantern in the dark, but I know better. It's a furnace and we are the fuel. The Emperor protects, they say. But tonight, as I listen to the distant thunder of the Hive's machinery, I wonder who protects us from the Emperor's protection.